or like that, and then like that. And I was thinking, you know what I'd rather have? I'd rather have a bunch of simple people that love God, that stand up and sing from the heart, than a bunch of showmanship when folks sing. There's something about, I want a choir that's touched Jesus. I want people who sing on this platform to sing because they've touched Jesus. I want people on our staff to touch Jesus. I want our Sunday school teachers to go to the class in the morning on Sunday and have had a touch of Jesus before they go. I long to pastor a church of people who have pressed through and said, I'm going to touch him, I'm going to touch him, I'm going to touch him. Say with Jacob, I'll not let thee go. Say with the widow, I'm going to be avenged. Say with the man, I must have the 3 loaves. Say with Savonarola, who said, I'll not preach till the power of God comes on me, and sat for 5 hours in the pulpit and wouldn't even stand up and preach while his people waited for 5 hours until the power of God came on him. I can recall, and I've told you so many times, I'm sure you're weary of hearing it, but I do not weary of telling it. I can recall how on the grave of my father, I said to God one day, I'm going to press through. I'm going to touch him. I'm going to touch him. I'm going to touch Jesus before I leave this grave. And I knelt on Dad's grave. Nobody knew I was there. I left East Texas 175 miles away and made a trip back to my dad's grave. And I knelt there and I said, I'm going to touch God before I leave. You're going to do something to me before I leave. And God became real to me as I knelt on the fresh grave of my dad. Oh, my dear beloved members of First Baptist Church, touch him! Touch him! You've got to get up in the morning with a body that's sick and been maimed for 12 years, and you've got to fight your way through and get knocked down and get bruised. Press on till you touch him and know God. Don't just know a preacher who knows God. Don't just know a teacher who knows God. Don't just know a church that knows God. Know God. I don't mean be saved only. I mean know God. Press through. Get to know him. Fellowship with him. Walk with him. Make him dear and real and precious to you as you live. Press through to Jesus. Press through to Jesus. But there's something else I want you to notice, and that is this. She had spent all she had. I'm glad she had. Did you know you can get saved easier when you spend all you had? She had spent all. Don't you recall the prodigal son left home, went out to the hog pen, was feeding. By the way, I was thinking the other day about this. That prodigal son, he was a Jewish prodigal son. He got a job feeding hogs. That's like me selling hot dogs. The way I feel about pork, which is negative. Well, the Jew wouldn't touch pork. This guy got a job feeding hot dogs. Feeding hot dogs. Feeding. Boy, I told you I'd see now. Bear with me in my folly. You'll be old someday. But he got at least I found out you're listening, but he got a job feeding hogs. He was feeding hot dogs to hogs with mustard and chili. But the Bible said, all of a sudden he began to think how it was back home. But it said when he had spent all. And this little lady didn't have any more money. No doubt when she had some money, see if I got any money. No doubt when she had little money, she said, I don't need Jesus now. I don't need him. I'll go to the doctor. And she went to one doctor and she said, Doctor, I've got an issue of blood and I need help. I've got an issue of blood. Can you help me? And the doctor examined her, and the doctor, every time he examined her, he had to be unclean himself, and he had to go wash himself, and he had to go take a bath himself, wash his clothes, and settle alone till the evening. Think how much it must have cost. She had to pay extra, no doubt. But she said, Doctor, can you help me? And the doctor said, I'm sorry. And he said, okay, you'll have to pay. But she said, I've got some more. By the way, leave this alone, here, fellas. Doc, would you watch these 3 fellas? And you 3 fellows, would you watch Doc? And I'll watch you 3 fellows. But she paid, but she still had some more. And so she heard of another doctor, and she went to him, and she said, maybe he's a chiropractor. And she said, Doctor, I've got an issue of blood, and I've had it so long. Do you think you can do anything? Girls on the front, listen to me. You said face me. And so the doctor said, I'll examine you. And he did. And he had to wash himself. And he had to wash his clothes. And he had to settle on till the evening. He was unclean. And he came and she said, Doctor, can you help me? Can you help me? He said, no. And gave her the bill. And she paid. But she still had some money left. And she heard about another doctor. And she went to that doctor and they said, Doctor, I've already tried 2 doctors. I don't have much more money. Could you help me, please? He examined her. He came back and said, I'm sorry. I've done all I could. And but that'll be, you have to pay the bill. She paid the bill. She clutched her money to her breast and said, I only have a little bit more. Oh, I've got to find the right doctor. I'm so tired of being unclean. I want to hold my baby. I want to hold hands with my boy. I want to be able to sit at the table with my family. I want to be able to enjoy the normal life. I want to shake hands with my friends. I want to embrace my mother. I want to be well. I want to be well. She goes to a doctor, again, another doctor, and says, Doctor, you've been highly recommended. Could you cure me of my issue of blood? He examines her. He fails. He says, you'll have to pay the bill. She pays the bill. She says, only have enough for one more doctor. Oh, it's got to be the right one. It's got to be, oh, I've got to have the right one. And she goes to the best doctor. She goes to the Mayo Clinic of her day. And she says, would you please help me? For almost 12 years, I've had this awful issue of blood. Would you please help me? Please. That's all I've got. You're the last chance I have. And they examined her at Mayo Clinic of Palestine. They came back and they said, we're sorry. There's no hope. And no doubt with a quivering hand, with tears rolling down her cheek, she placed the last bit of money she had. And now she said, there's nothing else. Somebody told me about a fella, a man, a strange fella, who's been walking around the Galilee a lot and sometimes comes down to Jerusalem. Somebody told me about. You reckon he could help me? I've spent all I have. I'll try it. I'll try it! And somebody told her he was coming. And she pressed through, and she spent all. Let me say this, dear friends. If you spent all, now's the time to come to Jesus. He specializes in folks who spend all. If you tried baptism, and that didn't work, and didn't give you peace of heart. If you tried the world, and that didn't give you peace of heart. If you tried making money, and that didn't give you the peace you want. And if you tried popularity, and that didn't give you the peace you want. If you tried dope, and that didn't give you the peace you want. If you tried liquor, that didn't give you the peace you want. If you tried amusement and pleasure, that didn't give you the peace you want. If you've come to the end of your rope, that's where Jesus hangs around. Is right the rope's end. And come to Him and press through to Him and touch Him, and you'll find in touching Him there's the answer. Now then, one other thing, and that is this. She told it. Let me tell you a sweet story. There was a historian called Eusebius in the 4th century, and Eusebius wrote a history about this lady. He said he thought her name was Veronica. In fact, he called her in history books that he wrote Veronica. He said in his history that in a certain city in northern Palestine called Panaes, Panaes, he said that was the house this lady lived in. It's in his history book. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but his history book says this, that this lady came back home, and at the entrance of her house, there were 2 brazen statues. One statue was of a lady on her knees, like this. And another statue was of a man with his coat or cloak off, covering her, and his hand outstretched, and she was touching the hem of his garment. The hem of the garment, little tassels that they wore, and these are very sacred things, and people weren't supposed to touch these little tassels. But this lady in the front of her house had 2 statues built, and everybody that walked by could look and say, "What are those statues?" And she could say, "I'm glad you asked me that. That's Jesus. The man is Jesus, and the lady is me." One day, after 12 years of suffering, I pressed through a crowd and touched Jesus, and He made me whole. And I want everybody to know it. That's why you ought to get baptized. Let everybody know it. That's why you ought to join a church. Let everybody know it. Let everybody know it. And everybody that passed by our house could see the statue. And I'm sure that in the neighborhood folks got to know it. And folks that come to visit neighbors and a stranger in town would say, "What's that statue up there?" And everybody in town would say, That's of Jesus there. Jesus, 400 years ago, a strange, peculiar kind of fellow lived here.